Hi everyone, this is Rebecca and I'm going to be doing a different kind of video here on reading the pattern, and it's in collaboration with John from WoT Up. We've decided to take on a hot topic or controversial question in the Wheel of Time and each give our opinion and then respond to the other's opinion. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing which character from either book 1 or book 2 I think should be cut from the upcoming Wheel of Time TV show adaptation. Then later in the video, I'll give you my off-the-cuff response to John's opinion on the same topic. If you want to hear John's argument for the character he thinks should be cut, as well as his response to the character I want to cut, you'll have to head over to his channel WoT Up to check that out, and I'm providing those links for you. If you're here for the first time from WoT Up, welcome, and I hope you will check out and enjoy my other Wheel of Time content as well. So let's get to some ground rules. We are picking a character that's either from book 1 or book 2 or both, so someone who could conceivably be shown in the first season of the TV show. We're not picking characters who have already been confirmed to be cast in the show. And when we say cut, we mean either we never see this character at all, or their plotline is taken over by another character. Maybe we get a hybrid character of some sort that covers more than one role. But we're not saying we'll just wait and introduce them later on in the series. To be clear, we have no idea if these characters are actually going to be cut. So if we happen to pick one of your favorites, it's all in fun. And feel free to argue for your favorite character or who you want to see cut in the comments. Lastly, a spoiler warning. My part of the video is going to have spoilers through all of book 2, The Great Hunt. So if you haven't read that far, go check out some of my spoiler-free Wheel of Time videos and catch up on the books and come back to this one. And now for my pick. I would cut the character of Liandrin. And for anyone who needs a reminder, Liandrin is an Aes Sedai who we meet early on in book 2 as an antagonist. She's a member of the Red Aja, and we fairly quickly realize she's actually a member of the Black Aja, meaning she is a Dark Friend and sworn to follow the Dark One. She has a pretty important plot line in book 2, and I'll avoid going into anything that happens after that in case anyone hasn't read further. Over the course of the series, we meet any number of Black Aja characters, and the entire Black Aja plotline is essential to the series. So I don't think we should cut the plotline, and the major actions that Liandrin's character has in book 2 probably shouldn't be significantly cut either. But I do think her plot could just as easily be taken over by almost any other member of the Black. And to me, I think that would make an improvement, and here's why. Because we have so many named Aes Sedai characters in the books, and a fair number of those are Black Aja, there's going to have to be some condensing, or else it's going to be hard to keep track of all the characters and none of them are going to get enough development. To me, Liandrin is one of the least interesting of the Black Aja characters. She's not that intimidating compared to some of the others. I don't find her motivations all that compelling, and she's a pretty obvious villain even before we have confirmation that she's a Dark Friend. The one thing that she does add is this sense of pettiness. And I do think it's important to make note of these sort of weaker human qualities like pettiness that do exist among Dark Friends. But I think it's possible to have qualities like that as among the characteristics in a more well-developed character rather than a defining characteristic. You could argue that Liandrin could just be developed more and given a more well-rounded character, and in the hands of a good actress, she could be interesting. But given that we have so many to choose from, I would just say cut her and use a character with more interesting source material to work with. Alternatively, they could pick a character who's more of a blank slate in the books to develop further, and that way they kind of have a little bit more license for any changes that they want to make without necessarily deviating from what the character is in the books. Also, we might want to avoid having too many named Dark Friends from a particular Aja, and so spread it around a little bit, pick a character from a different Aja to focus on to make that a little bit more interesting. I'm not going to suggest any particular character that I think should take over her role because that would maybe get into later spoilers, but there's a lot to choose from. So I'd love to know what you guys think. I've actually seen a lot of fan castings for Liandrin out there on Twitter, etc. So this might actually be a pretty unpopular idea. Maybe there's a lot of Liandrin love out there. Let me know. Maybe you can convince me she should stay, or maybe you agree. It will be interesting to see how John from WoT Up reacts as well. But right now, I'm going to go watch his pick for a character to cut and then come back here and give you guys an immediate reaction. So don't go anywhere. So watching John from WoT Up and his part of the video, I have to say my initial reaction is I like this idea because Huron, which is a character that he talks about wanting to cut, is a character that I almost chose as well. And so I've actually given a little bit of thought to Huron and how to cut him, what are the pluses and minuses there. And I will say that his take on how to do it is definitely a little different than mine. So if you haven't already, be sure you've watched his part of the video so you can see his arguments for it, as well as his response to my take on Liandrin. So for me though, I'll try to get into what I think the pros and cons are. The number one reason why I personally would want to cut Huron is actually the same reason why I chose not to cut him initially, and that has to do with the fact that he is a sniffer. So for me, this whole sniffer ability is pretty much just a plot device. And it is really, right? In the book, we have this need to track Fane and his group after he steals the Horn of Valir. We need some way to track him. And so we end up with this character who has the ability to smell violence. And it's kind of silly and it doesn't really show up again. So ideally for me, I'd love to cut the idea of having a sniffer altogether. But then that does introduce the problem of if you still want to have the hunt for the horn, we still need to have a way to track the horn after Fane steals it. We could come up with some one power way of tracking. Then the problem there is then you need to have someone who can track with the one power, and eventually you need to have two people who can do that because you have the group splits in two. Rand with his smaller group splits off from the rest. And in the book, Rand doesn't have an Aes Sedai with him. So, and I think that's important that he not have an Aes Sedai with him, for the whole point of that side plot would be really affected by having a character like that with him. I also don't think it would really work to have Rand suddenly have the ability to figure out how to track with the power. That would be pretty hard considering he's just figuring out his abilities and doesn't have anyone to teach him. So I don't necessarily think that works either. So in the books, after the main group loses Huron as the sniffer, they do start to use Perrin's ability with the wolves. They don't realize that that's what he's doing, but he is using his ability with the wolves to track the horn instead. So the show could go in that direction and just have Perrin be the one who's tracking the group from the get-go. The only problem there is what happens when Rand's little group splits off from the main group, or do you not have that happen? So my take on that is that we definitely want to see Rand have a similar kind of side plot, I believe. I think that's really important to his development at that point. So he's been told he's the Dragon Reborn. He has to try and come to terms with that information, start to learn his abilities as a leader. He needs to be put in situations where he's sort of forced to start to use his ability with the power. There's a lot of things that happen to him in that book with that side plot that I think are really important. So I think that is essential. But then what do we do at that point if Rand doesn't have a sniffer with him to help him track the horn through the mirror world? I mean, one option is that it's not actually that long of a time in the books. We could maybe have him not be tracking the horn at that point, just trying to get out of the mirror world. He still would encounter Celine as he does in the books, and I think that that could still work, and then you might have him just sort of happen to come back out where Fane and the Dark Friends are and kind of connect up with the story that way. So I definitely think that's a possibility. So in some ways, that's my preference, is to try and do a workaround like that where we don't have the sniffer ability at all and we just kind of change the plot enough to work without it. Now, I do want to just talk about John's suggestion of merging Huron's ability as a sniffer with another character, and he has proposed Uno. Now, this is a really interesting idea. The characters Uno and Huron have very different personalities. I love Uno. I definitely would love to see a character like Uno in the show and how he would interact, so I don't want to cut him. If he's a sniffer, that's fine. But one thing that I think is hilarious is if they did go in that direction and had Uno the sniffer go with Rand and Loyal and end up in the mirror world when they meet Selene. Oh my god, I'm just picturing Uno's reaction to Selene and that whole dynamic being totally different. I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but it's hilarious and I kind of want to see it now. So overall, that's my reaction. I pretty much agree that cutting Huron does make some sense. My reasonings are a bit different in that I would like to get rid of the sniffer ability altogether. Makes it a little bit more complicated. But then I definitely didn't think of this idea of having Uno the sniffer and how that would change the dynamic with Rand. And I think it would be kind of funny. I'm kind of into it. So overall, great ideas. I had a lot of fun with this. And I'm really curious to see what your reactions are to our suggestions in this kind of video. So let us know in the comments. What do you think about these cuts? Do you agree? Can you make a case for keeping these characters if they're your favorites? Maybe you have other characters that you think should be cut. Please let us know. We'd love to hear what those ideas are. Also, let me know if you liked this kind of video. Definitely open to doing similar things again in the future if people like it. If you're new to my channel, love it if you check out my other content. Stick around and subscribe if you like what you see. And hopefully a lot more hot topics to come. And let us know if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see us take on.